Okay. Um, so Energetix Health, what I'd like to do today is just ask you one favor. If you only get one thing out of this presentation, just focus on the first three slides because it has nothing to do with us particularly, but it has a lot to do with the US healthcare system. And the US healthcare system is the problem. It's terrible. And we have high prices, poor quality. It's very confusing. It's hard to make informed decisions. I mean, the list goes on. It's also, in the high prices, it's one of the most expensive in the world. Other way, sorry. And here's your sobering fact of the day. 200 million people in the US currently have at least one chronic disease. That's 60% of the population, and that number is getting worse every day. So we've come to accept that sick care is the norm, not health care, and that's a very important distinction. We are in the healthcare business, not the sick care business, which your typical traditional medicine practitioner or hospital might be. So we are out to solve this with what we call integrated care. And our main tools in the toolbox are custom blood tests and proven science. It's important to note that this is not alternative medicine. It's not telehealth. It's not device driven. It's driven by qualified people who have adapted this method of care. And this is science that goes back to the 1930s. It's nothing new. So our team is, this is really where I started to surround myself with the right people, and everybody here has experience in healthcare. I am not a doctor, so that question comes up often, and neither is my partner, but we're both technology people. So we've figured out a way to put this together, and we believe that from a medical standpoint, we've got the right people on the team. They're all US licensed and trained, and again, there's no smoke and mirrors here. So there are macro building blocks to integrated care: mind, body, and self, and we hear about that a lot. Self always gets the short shrift in that discussion. Everybody says it, but not a lot of people are doing anything about it. So when you talk about environmental stresses, it creates imbalances in your mind and your body. And it's important to treat all those, which is why one of our medical directors is a psychologist. And then we've got the micro building blocks of, this is not the stuff that any traditional doctor will tell you about. I won't read them, but we look beyond the symptoms, and it's a very personalized treatment program. So this is myself and my founder, Heidi, co-founder. We started this because we couldn't get good answers to our health questions. And in my case, I had a fairly serious one where I needed a transplant. I developed the Energetix program based on that need. And basically over the course of 4 years, my organ function has gone up by about 15%, and I no longer need the transplant. So how do we do this? The solution, it's a 5-step process, and 2 and 3 are really the critical parts. You've got a person talking to you and working with you in every step of this, but the lab testing that I talked about and the analysis is really where the rubber hits the road. And our processes are very unique. They're patentable. This is our IP, so I have to be very careful about how I show this, but I'll give you 3 examples. The CBC is your blood count, and it's done by everybody. I went through and looked at a couple of my own results and realized that I couldn't even figure out if the traditional care providers had lymphocytes in there. So, there's different terminologies and that sort of thing. A doctor could probably figure it out, but I want to be able to figure it out. So that's a mild example. Number two, hormones. Big part of what controls your body. We've introduced 3, 4, 10, 14 tests that we measure, and I just picked the top 4, and traditional medicine doesn't even give you a result on those. So they're not looking at that. And the same with micronutrients, where we put a lot of stock in that. And we've got 15 tests for that. And traditional medicine doesn't measure any of it. Last part of the process is you get a clinician from day one who acts as a health coach, and your health coach is not just an esoteric kind of position where they send you texts, did you remember to take your medication today, or anything like that. It's a trained profession, typically run by RNs, which is what our case is. So you have somebody to talk to all the time, and the health coach is your direct connection to the medical staff. The competition, we get this all the time. Everybody's doing this. Well, nobody's doing this. We can't find anybody, and we've surveyed hundreds of companies. They're all in specific niches, but nobody's giving you the whole body approach. And our primary market is to sell within large healthcare organizations. And the reason for that is insurance coverage. A group like Kaiser, for example, they deliver the coverage and the care, and that's an important differentiator. But our end user, beyond who our customer is, we did a study of 500 respondents, and we say 30 to 47 years old is our prime age range, but it's actually 24 to 75 when you expand it out to the people who will actually use it. So our go-to-market strategy is we're going to develop an early adopter, or we have developed an early adopters program, which just launched a couple of weeks ago. We have our first patient in that. We're going to run 50 people through the program, and then we're looking for regional pilot programs on top of that. So in closing, Energetix, the time is right for this shift in thinking, I believe, and we're well positioned with the right knowledge, the right staff, the right approach, and I welcome your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. This is really interesting because you mentioned that people say there's a lot of other folks doing this, and that's kind of my first impression. There's companies like LabCorp, and I can't remember all the names, but I've seen them where you can order your own blood test. They send you a kit, you put blood into it, you send it back, they send you results. Maybe not the same kind of stuff you're measuring. And maybe they don't have a clinician too. So what's the difference between, is this something like I receive at home and I do it myself, or do I go into a lab? Like, what's the process like, I guess, is what I'm curious about.
You do have to go into a lab, and we've got one company that can give us national coverage. They're a competitor for LabCorp and Quest. We've chosen them because they're basically an upstart kind of company, and they're very interested in what we're doing. LabCorp and Quest, you're just another vendor on the sheet. I'll address one of those issues. I could go on for a long time on a lot of them, but the idea of the home testing doesn't work. It works for certain things, like you get a colon screening, whatever, they drop a box off and away you go. You can't do that with what we're doing, because you have to control the samples in a very different way. And My doctor, who's one of our advisors, for example, takes 8 vials of blood when he does a standard panel on me. And that is clearly not what you get when you go to the hospital or a doctor.
Oh,
Okay. So Alan's got a question. He says, although it takes 3 medical doctors to manage his healthcare, heart, gastro, and hormonal, he gets results from all the items you showed in your charts. So is that unusual for him, or is he just like under some sort of specialty where he is getting that information?
It's not, I won't say it's unusual, but it comes down to the quality of the doctor, the quality of, or the doctors, the quality of the healthcare system. So for example, our initial consult with the doctor, an MD, is an hour and a half. And by insurance industry regulate or standards, a doctor is supposed to spend 10.4 minutes with you in a traditional care environment. And I go to a specialist. I've got a liver problem, and I go to a hepatologist, and I get my 10.4 minutes. But then I go home and I have to piece together all of the stuff that is important to get to one score that I need to track. They don't even hand that to me. It's the one thing that I need to know all the time. So it really is a quality of care issue in this case, I believe.
Okay, makes sense.
If you find a great doctor in any of those areas, go to them.
So you mentioned wanting your primary customer is large health organizations. And I'm curious, why don't they do this themselves? Why haven't they, or what's stopping them, or they just don't care? Like, why wouldn't like a Kaiser Health, for example, have this kind of service more personalized, like you're talking about?
Well, they claim to, okay. And it's mainly marketing. So if I call Denver Health, which is a middle of the road, kind of healthcare organization, they're recording on the wait line for the phone, says, we provide integrated care, and Kaiser has their Thrive program, which has been around for 20 years now. But I've been through Thrive. And what Thrive is you walk into a primary care physician, or at least this is my experience. I don't know if everybody has seen this, but you walk into your primary care physician, they give you the standard tests. They say, okay, you have an obesity problem. You need to get in touch with that. The obesity clinic is the third door on the left, and go in there and schedule an appointment, and good luck. Okay, there's no continuity. And the obesity people are most likely looking at, how do we get you on a weight loss program? Okay, that doesn't address the causative factors of why you're obese in the first place. That's a behavioral issue and a physical issue. It's mind, body, and self all in that particular case. So a lot of companies do offer this, but they don't.
Okay, so then I guess my question then is, how do you pitch this to them? Because if you go in and say, hey, yeah, I know you have a program like this, but it's garbage, they're probably going to get a little defensive. So I'm curious, like, what's your angle on how you're approaching them?
I don't say it's garbage, because
No, I understand, but in a matter of speaking.
what they provide is a valuable service, but they don't provide the same service. So we're saying that we're complementary to what you do. It's another level of service that you can provide that nobody else has. And they're in the business to make money. And they've got 12.5 million members as of last count. And if they can offer something which is at a relatively low cost to them, it's basically a rounding error in the cafeteria. Then why not offer it? and they're going to do what they want to do with it. Unfortunately, we started off as a B2C, and I was talked out of that because B2C, I've got to educate millions of people. And in this case, I have to educate 10 or whatever it is, and they're probably going to know most of what I'm telling them anyway. And many doctors wish that they could provide this kind of care, but they aren't allowed to. So Kaiser may be the right one for us. They might not. We'll find out.
Yeah. Well, one last question in this line of questioning. I know I feel like I'm grilling you here, but so if they do take your program on board, do you expect, is it kind of like you would recommend they charge more, like a premium for this extra service? Or is it so low cost they can absorb it and it would be basically a selling point for them to get more people in the door?
I believe it's the latter. I'm sure that some of the smaller companies that we deal with will probably charge as a line item, but even then, what we get paid is $149 a month per client. Okay, that is nothing in healthcare. That's a couple of cell phones, right? So if you decided that this was a way you wanted to go, and that comes down to education on our part, then the market analysis that we've gotten is at $149. Sure, you're going to provide me something actually valuable out of my healthcare. Yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
But a Kaiser, I would expect they would just roll it in, because like I said, it's a tiny amount. They won't even notice $149.
Yeah, which is a crazy thing in itself. That is another whole discussion.
Right.
Coach Mitch's question, is blood testing based on patient request or discussed, I guess, with HC before testing, maybe their healthcare provider or doctor?
We can involve your current healthcare providers as much as you want, and we will. However, I would advise against it, and the reason being, and then I'll come around to answer the question. The reason being that the healthcare providers, every doctor knows better than every doctor. And I've gone to, just as an experiment, I've gone to 3 hepatologists, and I know what my condition is. I know it better than most of their patients, I would think. And I got 3 completely different answers. One told me you'd need a transplant now. Another one said, yeah, you're going to need a transplant, but probably 5-10 years. And another said, transplant, who told you that? So it was all over the place. So if no matter what the source comes from, the blood testing is really what we need to provide any value, because it becomes a numbers game. If you look at, say your protein and your sodium intake and recommended ranges, which I can go on all day about how useless those are, might say that both of those should be a 5. Okay. But your protein is at an 8 and your sodium intake is at a 3. Okay. So a typical treatment plan would be to raise the sodium level, lower the protein, get them both to 5. If the doctor's even thinking that way. Okay. What we do is we say, well, based on you, because you're not an acceptable range. You're a person. You're not a number. Okay. What we think is that your protein should be at a 10 and your sodium should be at a 4. And then we'll treat other factors within your body that make that happen. And a lot of that can be done through nutrition, and it's not hard. It's not like counting calories or anything like that. It's just making decent choices. You can't have Burger King 7 days a week. and expect to be healthy. But there are many ways to treat that. And prescription medication is absolutely the last thing that we want to do.
Yeah,
So that
definitely
was
no
a
more than,
very long answer to that question. Sorry.
no, appreciate that. Yeah, definitely no more than 6 days a week of Burger King if you want health. That's,
Right.
everyone knows that's the
Yeah.
rule. That's the rule of thumb.
Well, you guys are
Stay
in
as
Florida,
McDonald's.
so.
Coach Amish also wants to know, do you use nanotechnology for your nutrient recommendation?
That it comes down to which lab you're talking with, and Vibrant America, who's the lab that we are pretty deep in negotiations with. I couldn't answer that question for you about how they do the analysis. What I can say is that personally and professionally for our medical team, they are very happy with what Vibrant provides. And the labs are controlled federally and licensed and all that, so we don't get into their processes.
Okay. And so what's the exit strategy here? Would you like ultimately to get bought out by one of these health companies, or?
Well, I don't like exit strategies. I didn't get into this for that. But yeah, the obvious one is that we'll do a pilot program. Somebody will say, yeah, I got to have this so nobody else can have it, and we can go. Another course is one of the labs buying us because they are offering at-home analysis. It's very crude, very, very crude, but they could be in there. We're also looking at it as part of employee benefit programs, which are becoming more and more flexible. So you can go in and you can choose that you want Energetix as one of your healthcare benefits. And then the last would be, I'd hate to use the word franchise, but sort of white label it to doctors' offices. Maybe white label, maybe not. I'm not really interested in doing that because that gets crazy, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, because it sounds to me like you're creating a new standard of empowered care of some sort, to where, maybe you can get a lot of doctors on board and into a, nationwide program of some sort. I don't know, but yeah, all those seem like viable options too that you mentioned.
Yeah, well, there's a group called the Institute for Functional Medicine, and that's the general term that's used, functional medicine or osteopathic medicine. There's a number of them, but functional medicine is kind of the general term. And the IFM has, I think they're up over 10,000 members at this point, and they're all doctors who have studied this. There's a separate degree that you can get on top of an MD, which is a doctor of osteopathy. So if you ever see DO next to someone's name, that means that they've intensely studied this. And one of our medical advisors is a DO. Another one is probably about 3 months away from getting her DO. So there are people who specialize in this, and our goal is to scale it because it's being done everywhere. The Northeast is, well, the East Coast in general is much more open to this method of care. And of course, California, because they'll try anything. Speaking as a former Californian, I know. But there's a good portion of the US that just doesn't even know that this exists. And we've got to change the vocabulary.
Yeah, so is this organization you mentioned, are they considered like do they have like a standardization around functional medicine, or is there a standard? And if not, is that something you can create, like the good housekeeping seal of approval, or like the Zagat survey that you see, that kind of where you set the frickin' standard and then you're the natural solution as well, of course.
Yeah, we've definitely considered that. And if anybody's familiar with the B Corporation, we're thinking of the H Corporation for healthcare. And that would be a certification program that we would manage, or maybe IFM might want to manage it. I don't know. I talked with their president, and she's very close to the vest about what their future plans are. But there is a licensing method that does exist, and it's in every major educational system that I'm aware of, to get the DO. And it's not easy. And it's, it's there. Whereas a lot of times you go to like a naturopath. Okay, naturopaths practice some of this. They do it generally very differently, but it's the Wild West, because in most places they're not regulated. There is no license. There's licensing in some places, but it's kind of not really, and it gets very complicated once you get to that level. So we've just said MD at a minimum, DO is best.
Got it. This is fascinating. I've got to send it over back to Eric for a final question, but appreciate you sharing. This is actually really interesting to me.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. Appreciate your time and getting up a couple hours early to come talk to us. Final question is, what can we as a community do for you?
So I've got 3 questions. Number 1, is our message clear? Number 2 is the process that you'd go through as one of our clients clear? And number 3, not really a question, but just think about your friends, your family, yourself, whatever. Just think about who you think could benefit from this. And we are looking for people for our early adopters program. It's all you have to do is go to a lab, get a blood test, do a couple of conference calls, and fill out some surveys. That's all we're looking for. We've got about 20 or maybe 20 spots open right now, but we're thinking of expanding that because we've had a lot of interest.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
We've got a little bit of time. So I wanted to, sometimes I'll put up these discussion questions for the group. And this was one that I've had sort of waiting in the wings for a few weeks. Name someone that everyone should meet. Not like oh, they're so cool, everyone should get to know them, but if you can think of somebody who you would recommend to any entrepreneur looking for help, who would that person be? I'm going to go a little close to home, and I'm going to say Sean Bag is one of those people, because he mentors so many entrepreneurs and works with so many groups. 2 of them just placed in the top 3 of the Crummer pitch competition a week or 2 ago. And I had coffee with Crystal Cunningham from Bold Culture Beauty on Monday. Those of you who remember her from, I think, last week, she's got the natural hair care products. And I had forgotten Sean was a mentor, and she just mentioned him out of the blue. And I kept thinking, Sean's just everywhere. And he knows a lot of people, and he knows a lot of stuff. He's just a very smart person. And anybody that I know who would be starting an entrepreneurial journey, Sean is the person I would introduce them to. So I cheated and went a little close to home, but if you know somebody who's well outside the reach of 1 million cups, who is that person that you think everybody should meet?
Thank you, Eric. That's very nice of you. I have right now about 120, and yesterday I had 13 more. So close to 125, 130 mentees all over the globe. and I have about 85 business models in my brain. I
Wow.
visualize everything. That's all I do. So it takes me about 15 minutes to sort it out. Okay? And most of the time, when I get started, I write a death certificate in my
By the way,
head.
that would be, Sean, that would be a great title for your book, is the 85 business plans in my brain, abridged, and you can, that would be awesome.
Abridged.
See, it's not a business plan. It's a business model. I
Or a
visualize.
business model, yeah.
Yeah, I visualize the entire business model for each and every mentees, and I know how that success will look like, their vision and everything. I visualize that. That's why I call myself a Sherpa. I'm on the top of the Mount Everest, because startup is like climbing Mount Everest. No two ways about it. Some startups add to that triathlon. That's why 95% fail, and I know why exactly they fail. I know that, and I know how to minimize it. That's what I do. I try to minimize. That's all I do. So I enjoy it every day. I spend every waking hour innovating for everybody. So anybody who wants to, I'll be glad to sit down and have coffee and go from there. Okay.
We still
And
got to capture that in a book, though. That's still going to be, that's so valuable.
My headquarters is Panera Bread in Winter Park.
All right. Who else? Who is your go-to person?
Well, I can offer a generalized statement. I'm pretty well connected both here and California on the startup scene or startup scenes. And if anybody needs any help with anything, chances are I know somebody I can point you to. And it wouldn't just be I met him on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time out there understanding who's available and using them myself, but also passing them along to other people. So feel free to contact me anytime.
Okay, great. Thank you. Josh, who do you recommend people to?
This is a tough one. I was trying to think of like a type of person also, maybe not a specific person, but like a role that a person would play. And my usual advice is to find someone that's in your industry and even that you think will never talk with you. Because what I've learned is people get this idea that, oh, this CEO or this influencer, this person is so busy, they'll never have time for me. But they don't realize that people that are truly, let's call them wealthy, not rich, but not money based, but just wealthy, successful people love sharing. And you'd be surprised what you can get from like a cup of coffee or a friendly reach out and saying hello. So I think the main point here is reach out to people that, whether or not you think they'll reach back out to you, go find that mentor. I think having a mentor, just period. You should be a mentor and have a mentor. That's what I believe always. So it almost doesn't even matter who the person is, because it takes one person to say the right thing at the right time that completely transforms the way you think about your problem, your business, your life, and you just can't really plan that based on the person. It happens.
Yep.
Yeah, and to build on that slightly, we took an odd approach at one point. We decided to call healthcare and wellness providers whose businesses had failed, and they were the most helpful people. One guy, they would have been a direct competitor. I think they were about 5 to 10 years ahead of their time. But he sent me he wrote 10 pages of where they went wrong. And it was the most helpful thing ever. So don't just look for the pat on the back, you're doing a great job. Look for the tough love.
Yeah. Great. DJ Ant, what do you have?
All right. Okay, let me just reaction. I don't have a specific person, but what I would say is as kind of like a channel is, I would I would recommend that you should try and meet your future self. Okay. Um, the reason why I say future self is because I think sometimes it's easier to reach out and talk to other people than actually to have that kind of conversation like with yourself, like in the future. You know, sometimes it can be easier to be dismissive of your own kind of gut instincts over somebody else who is more kind of qualified. Um, but then again, it's about striking a balance, isn't it? Like so, but I definitely would recommend that you should entertain the idea of have or having that conversation with with your future self.
Okay, excellent. It's funny. I wrote a book on personal branding back in 2010, personal branding and social media, with a friend of mine,
Mm,
and we wrote it for the me from 3 years previously,
mm,
when I had not done any networking, when I hadn't
right.
gotten on social media, and I was just starting out. And so in a
Mm,
way it was sort of like that. I was the
yeah.
future person. Here's how you catch up to me.
Right.
So it's that same idea. So
Yeah.
great, excellent. Rebecca, who do you have?
So we have these businesses, in different states. And I have found the first place I always start is with our Chamber of Commerce. And ours here in Lake Nona is the most robust one I've ever had. And so, you know, I would say just asking people, I guess my go-to first is always the Chamber of Commerce, because in theory, they're well connected. Um, and so that's where I go. And I think you can meet people there and talk to people that you wouldn't, in industries that are outside of your own, and there's always something you can learn from someone else. And so that's like my first go-to. But then I got connected with somebody here in Lake Nona. Her name is Dr. Linda Travelut, and she does like once a week, and she does mentoring and stuff. And so kind of what you were talking about with Shan is being able to find a mentor who, can direct you to meet other people is really, I think, important. But I'd say my go-to is the chamber. We're a member of chamber in every area that we have a business, just to stay connected and meet other people, other business owners in the area.
Excellent. All right. Anyone else? If not, I've got another one. I don't know if you remember Augusto Guevara from Fundopolis. He came when when we were meeting in person. Very, very tall guy. If you, it's like most people remember that about him over anything else. But a very tall guy. And Fundopolis is a sort of venture capital investment group. And anytime somebody talks about needing to find investors, I immediately refer them to Augusto, not because he's the option and he's the one who's going to make it happen, but he knows the people that person should talk to. So he is a sort of a referral clearinghouse for me when it comes to finding people with money. So that's another one.
Can I can I say one more thing,
Sure.
Eric? As far as I'm concerned, each mentee is my mentor. Everybody came out. That's where I learn everything. And I officially have 3 mentors. One is 97 years old, my very first mentor from General Foods. I used to call him Godfather, and he lives in Connecticut. He's difficulty hearing. We talk once a month or so, a little bit. I have another one about 85 years old in New York, and one used to be here at 65 years old. 3 official mentors, I call them. I take that they know me inside out, so I seek their help to see how I can improve and everything. So plus every mentee I have, literally hundreds of them, they are mentors. I learn every time I meet with them. I learn something new.
Okay, great. Anyone else? All right.